following seminar from the Open University of Hong Kong's Great Speakers Series. Dr. Allan Zeman, the chairman of Lan Kwai Fong Group, talks about how he got started in business in Montreal, Canada, and then in Hong Kong, making his first $1 million at just 19 years old. Dr. Zeman provides tips and advice from his experience working in the garment industry, developing Lan Kwai Fong, and then revitalizing Ocean Park. He also discusses the importance of technology and encourages his young audience to be proud of Hong Kong and make it a better place.
It's indeed my great pleasure to be here. I know the title says The Entrepreneurial Journey from Garment Business to Lan Kwai Fong, but I'm going to talk more. From Lan Kwai Fong to Ocean Park, from Ocean Park to the future of Hong Kong. Where does Hong Kong fit in to the future? Where is your future? Which I feel is very, very important. My past is a good story, but the future of Hong Kong is an even better story. I've been in Hong Kong now for 48 years. Originally came from Canada, for those of you that don't know. Came here when I was 19 years old. I made my first million US when I was 19 years old, importing ladies' sweaters into Canada at the time. And Hong Kong had all the factories in those years. That's what brought me to Hong Kong because my father died when I was 7 years old. He was a young man, but medicine wasn't so good in those years, and he died of a heart attack. And so I really grew up without a father, but adversity makes you stronger. Rather than feel sorry for myself, it made me much more mature at a very, very young age. And it gave me the ability to look through life through adult eyes as a kid. And I started working actually when I was in school, but I was delivering newspapers when I was 10 years old and earning about $35 a week, more than my teachers at 10. And at 12, I lied a little about my age. I also got a job on weekends in a restaurant in a steakhouse cleaning tables. I said I was 16 years old. They didn't have internet in those years. The HR couldn't really check on your age. And so told a little white lie. And also, so I was together between my newspaper delivery service and my job in the restaurants and on the weekends, besides school. I was earning about $60 a week. And it was a lot of money. My teachers were only earning about $35 a week. So, and my friends were each making $1 allowance, getting from their parents. So it taught me independence, and it taught me always to look ahead, to look to the future. You know, my way, the past is always gone. You can't change the past. The future you can change. You can learn from the past, but you can't change it. So I always look ahead. I always think about tomorrow. In my world, I never clutter my brain. A brain is like a computer. If you clutter it with too much junk, you get junk out. But if you leave it open and you don't think too much, don't worry too much, and just look at things differently, you'll be very, very successful. One of the things I've always said is I look at things not for what they are. I look at things for what they could be. So always look differently. The successful people, whether it's Steve Jobs, whether it's Li Ka-shing, whether it's whoever it is, many people look at things. The average person looks at things. Everyone sees the same thing. Those entrepreneurs that do very, very well see something totally different. And that gives them the success. The other thing I've always said is I never worry about failure. Failure is actually good, because if you fail, it means you tried. You can learn from failure and then try again and don't make the same mistake. But many people are so worried about failure, and so at that point, it becomes they never try. And then if they don't try, you'll just be stuck where you are. And so I started my business at the age of 16, actually. I left school and I went to university at nighttime for 1 year. I was always in what they call the brain class, the top class. But don't tell anyone, I never liked to study. It was just something, I liked to write exams, just using my brain, just using common logic. And I did okay with that. Because, you know, in life, and I say to many, many students, I've spoken to many, many young people who are graduating, and I always tell them, going to university is very, very important. The book gives you a basic foundation. But many times in life, you have to think beyond the book, because when you get out of school, you'll find that you'll face problems. Every day you'll have different problems, whether it's business, whether it's family, whatever. The first thing you'll do is look at the book, or refer back to the book of what they taught you. But many times the answer is not there. And I tell the students, unless you want to be a professor in a university, professor in a university is taught to think within the box, within the book. Because that's a structure, basic structure, and actually a very, very good thing. But in the outside world, in the real world, outside of university, outside of school, you'll face problems every day. And so then you have to sometimes solve the problem by thinking out of the box. The answer sometimes is not what they taught you. And that's when you have to be quick and be positive. The most important thing in life, if you want to get ahead, is to be positive. I always had a lot of confidence in myself. If you don't have confidence in yourself, you'll never succeed. You'll never get ahead. And so I started my business, first 16, in the fashion industry, in a ladies' lingerie company, because there was an ad in the newspaper looking for a lingerie salesman. And I knew nothing about lingerie, but at 16 years old, it sounded very interesting to a young man. And so I went to apply, and of course I got the job, and I was actually started off working in the stock room and the shipping room. And from there, I saw the big money was in sales, because the salesmen were all working on commission. And so I thought to myself, well, I was 17 years old, I want to be a salesman. So I was in Montreal in Canada at the time. The largest dress company was looking for a salesman, and a showroom salesman. And so I knew nothing about what a lady's dress looked like, but I got all dressed up and I went to apply for the job. And so I was a perfect candidate. I ticked every box that the ad wanted. So they said, well, when could you start? I thought it's not cool if I say right away. I said, let me think about it. I'll call you the next morning. And that's the way my career started, actually. And I started working selling ladies' dresses. I learned very quickly about ladies' dresses, and I was a good salesman. To be a salesperson, you have to have confidence in yourself, and you have to convince your customer that you know what you're talking about, even if you don't, which is what most salesmen don't know about their product. And so I started selling, and I was doing very, very well. And at the age of 19, I decided to start my own business. I always thought, if someone else can do it, why can't I? We all come from the same place. No matter if you're white, black, Chinese, yellow, green, whatever color you are, we all come from our mother's womb. Everyone I know comes from their mother's womb. And the one thing I realized at a very young age, no matter how much money you have, death is the great equalizer. So in life, I never think I'm better than someone. I might have more money than someone, but never think you're better, because death is the great equalizer. At the end of the day, the boss and his driver will wind up the same place. It's something that through life, if you respect people, if you respect everyone, they will respect you back. And that's a very, very important lesson that I can teach people. And so I've been with, I can say, with many presidents, I've been with many, many kinds of people, but I still always have my feet on the ground. The most important thing is to be humble. If you're humble, you have a good chance at being very, very successful. At the end of the day, for me, so I was in the garment business, and that's what brought me to Hong Kong, because all the factories at that time were in Hong Kong, not in China, not anywhere else, but Hong Kong was a manufacturing base. I came here, I was 19 years old, and traveling across from Canada to Hong Kong, I started my own business. I was importing ladies' sweaters from Hong Kong, and it was a company called Jump for Charlie. And I thought to myself, wow, when I first got here, it was like in the airplane, was like coming to the other end of the world, like going to the moon. I told my late mother, I'm going to Hong Kong, and I was going to move here eventually, because my first year in business, I was importing ladies' sweaters from here, and I made $1 million US profit at 19 years old. And I sat down with the accountants. I thought, I'm rich. 19 years old, I didn't have a lot of money. I came from a broken family. So I sat down with the accountants at the end of the year. I said, I have a check for $1 million. They said, not so fast. I said, why? They said, you got to pay tax. I said, tax? You're kidding, how much? That in Canada was 50%, 50. I said, 50%, you're kidding, who gets the tax? Socialized medicine, socialized this, socialized that, someone has to pay for it. So now I'm adding up very quickly in my head. I have $500,000, 19 years old, still a lot of money to a 19-year-old. I said, okay, I'll have a check for $500,000. He said, not so fast again. I said, why? They said, you got to pay tax. I said, I just paid tax. That was corporation. Now you have to declare a dividend for personal tax at a lesser rate. I think I wound up with $425,000 out of my $1 million. Still a lot of money to a 19-year-old. I said, how does anyone get rich in this country? They said, everyone pays tax. So I took my trip to Hong Kong, and I started importing from Hong Kong. And I said to, at that time, my buying office was Swire McLean. And I said, what's the tax in Hong Kong? They told me 15%, 1-5. Wow, a bright light went off in my head. 15%? How many years will I make $1 million? I said I'm going to move to Hong Kong for a few years, put away some money, and go back to Canada. I told my late mother I'm going to move to Hong Kong. She says, you're going to move to Japan? Nobody knew where Hong Kong was in those years. You know, they knew everything was made in Japan, you know, and made in Hong Kong was just starting. And so I said, no, it's Hong Kong, it's China. To a mother living in Canada, that sounded very terrible to her son moving to China. I said, don't worry, it'll be fine. And I came here, and I just love the energy, the can-do spirit of Hong Kong in those years. Everything was possible. Hong Kong was a place you could have a dream at night, wake up the next morning, make it a reality. That was the beauty of Hong Kong. You had limited government interference. It was easy to raise capital if you had a dream with the banks. Everything was good. My biggest problem, because at that time Hong Kong was under British administration, Cantonese was not so difficult for me. The hardest thing was understanding the British, their accent, the English language was a very, very difficult thing. Half the time I just used to shake my head. I didn't know what they're talking about. But it was a totally different world. I watched Hong Kong in those years. You know, we went up to 97, and I saw the nervousness. I went through the nervousness of Hong Kong going back to China. But I myself, because I was doing importing, I set up a trading company here. And because that company became very, very famous, it was the second largest supply chain management, we called it trading company in those years. We were the middleman between a buyer and a seller, the factories and the buyers. And actually, if you compare it today, it was no different than Alibaba, than Taobao. It was the platform. We were the guy in the middle, introducing buyers to factories and taking a commission. And that was the principle behind Alibaba, but we didn't have technology in those years. And so I built up that company from Hong Kong. We had 35 offices around the world. Hong Kong was the head office. We had offices from Southeast Asia, we had offices in Egypt, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, as far as South America as well. And I learned to do business in so many different countries. The most important thing I learned about the country is if you want to be successful, you have to fit into the culture of the country. Don't try to change the culture. The culture is much older than you. And so I built that company up. It became the second largest in Hong Kong. And that became very, very famous at the time. Always thinking ahead, always thinking tomorrow. Something drives you. Keep on. As an entrepreneur, you want to be successful. And you want to see, the most important thing is look at your competition. If any of you are in business in the future, look at what the competition is offering. And then look at how you can be different. How can your product be better than the competition? Give it that little twist. Make it better. Steve Jobs was a master at that. He gave you the Apple phone. He did a logo, an Apple logo, but not just an apple. Took a bite out of the apple. He made it in the old days, when mobiles first came out, they were big, black. I still remember with the antenna, and they were done by engineers. Companies like Motorola, Ericsson, Nokia, all these companies were the giants at that time. Apple was just a little company. Steve Jobs comes along. Although he's not an engineer, he was a marketer. He looked at things very different. He challenged his engineers to give him a sleek product, a logo, make it cool, make it different. Those companies that failed to change, like the Nokias and Motorola's, the Ericssons, who were the giants, didn't change. At the end, what happened to them? Their history. Today it's Apple, it's Huawei from China, Huawei phones, it's Samsung. Those are the giants. The other companies disappeared. And so it's important, if you have a product, be open-minded. Think out of the box. Make your product the best on the market. In mobile phones, as we all know today, Huawei is the one they came up with the better pictures, and each one is competing with the other. And how can we be different? And that's something that's really, really, really important. So I always valued that. Everything I did, I always aimed for first class. If you aim for first class, you get to business class. If you aim for business class, you get to economy. If you aim for economy, you go broke. So always try, whatever you do, whether you're in school, whether you're studying, I see we have many secondary students here, try to be the best in your class. And so that's what I always strived for, and I was always successful. And of course, from the garment business, fashion industry, I then graduated to Lan Kwai Fong because I had many buyers coming to Hong Kong. And I always thought to myself, Hong Kong was such an international place, but most restaurants, as we know today, were in hotels. And in those years, you had to get dressed up. When you went to the hotels under the British administration, they used to give you a jacket if you didn't have a jacket to go to a restaurant, and a tie. In the fashion business, as you can tell, we don't wear ties. In those years, I didn't wear socks either. And so if they give you a jacket, you know, they had to give you a jacket. And I thought to myself, Hong Kong is such an international city. Why not create an area like Lan Kwai Fong? And that's what I did. I slowly started to open some restaurants in what the Lan Kwai Fong area was just old warehouses. But it was a block away from Queens Road, Central, which was the heart of Central. I thought, if I can get people to walk one block, we can have an area. And I slowly started to buy up the property in my own way. Nobody knew what I was doing, because it was very easy in those years to get money from the bank. Just by a phone call, you can get money, you can get a loan for the building. And I slowly started to redevelop the buildings. I took old office buildings and I converted the upper floors into restaurants. And because offices, the rents were much lower than retail space, I thought if I can up the rents, the value of the building will go up. So I was slowly learning about the property market. And I started buying, and most of the people, the Chinese in Hong Kong, didn't know what I was doing, but I was slowly buying up the property. And that became, of course, in Hong Kong, property became very, very lucrative. And I tell everyone in this room, if you have a chance in your life, there are many young people here, try to buy property. As little money as you have, you will never go wrong in Hong Kong. Yes, there's ups and downs, peaks and valleys, and don't buy at the high, but when it comes down is the best time to buy, because Hong Kong is such a dynamic place with such a low tax base. Property will always rule. And so from there, Lan Kwai Fong became very famous. I started to do Lan Kwai Fong. We had events. I had the street pedestrianized, closed off, and that became really a go-to place for many fashionable people. And even today, Lan Kwai Fong continues 35 years later to be one of the hot places in Hong Kong. I just saw a report the other day. The most places that tourists come to in Hong Kong is Lan Kwai Fong, Ocean Park, and one other place. In essence, Lan Kwai Fong became a brand. And because it was just a street, basically, but today Lan Kwai Fong means it's a lifestyle, it's entertainment, it's culture. It stands for all the things that young people love. And it continues to transform itself, like the fashion industry that I was in. Fashion changes. Being in the fashion business at a very young age, fashion changes 6 times a year. Every season, people always look at hemlines, ladies' hemlines. One season it's above the knee. The next season it's below the knee. The men's ties, fat ties one year. Another season it's slim ties. The more you can get people to change colors and say that their wardrobe is obsolete, the more you can sell. That's what the fashion business is all about. I learned about it at a very young age. And so Lan Kwai Fong became very famous, became a brand. We opened Lan Kwai Fong in Chengdu in China about 10 years ago, and it's been very, very successful. We're building a huge project called Dream Center in Shanghai, about almost 5 million square feet. Also, it'll be a great cultural zone with the Lan Kwai Fong type. And looking at other cities in China, from Shenzhen to Guangzhou, many of the cities in China are very, very prosperous, and China's changed dramatically. When I was in the fashion industry, I had my first office in Hunan, in Changsha. That was probably about 35 years ago, a very, very long time, when China was the old China. I watched China changing over the years. I could write a book about my experiences to China in those years. I saw the changes taking place in China, and that really changed my thought, my lifestyle of China. As China came up to 1997, it gave me a very, very good understanding of the Chinese people, the Chinese market. In the meantime, while I was doing that, along comes Mr. Tung, was the chief executive at that time, and he calls me one day. He said, you know, Allan, I need your help. I said, what can I do for you? He said, you know, we have Ocean Park. You know, Disney's coming to Hong Kong, and Ocean Park's losing money. We don't know what to do with it. Some people say close the park, sell off the land. It's worth a lot of money. It's on the water. Other people say keep the park. He said, we don't know what to do with it. So we would really like to see if you can come and tell us what to do. And so I said, you know, CH, you know, I've never been to Ocean Park. My kids grew up in Ocean Park, but I was a businessman. I said, I never went to Ocean Park. I said, you know, I know nothing about theme parks. He said, well, do me a favor. I said, let me think about it. One thing about him, he was very persistent in those years. Called me 6 times. By the 6th time, I figured I'd better give him face. I said, okay, I'll go and take a look. I went to Ocean Park, and the park was a typical government park, falling apart. The pavement was crumbling, the paint was peeling. It looked like it was going out of business. Now, I was from the outside. I was basically a customer. And I always think of yourself as a customer. Don't think of yourself as the boss. Put yourself in the shoes of the customer, the eyes of the customer. You'll look at things totally different. You'll be less arrogant. As a boss, you try to say, this is the way. As a customer, you look at things through their eyes, and then you have a chance to be successful. And so I looked at it, and I thought, this park looks like it's going out of business. How can people come back here and return back? And I thought, Disney's coming, very intimidating, the best name in theme parks in the world. How are you going to go against Disney? And I thought to myself, you know, I know nothing about theme parks, but I love challenges. If that's in your nature, you know, when you see something, when you start a new business, it's like adrenaline going through your veins. You start to really love it. And so I started at Ocean Park, and the first thing I did was the uniforms of the staff all looked like they were from the 1950s. Typical government park. And the staff that worked there were all dejected. They didn't know if they'll have a job or if the park can continue. And I thought, the first thing I come out of the fashion business, the first thing I need to do is give the staff confidence. I knew nothing about theme parks, but I knew I needed a strong management team. Getting some people who from the theme park business from overseas, from the US, they're very great on theme parks, and locals who have been at the park for many years, combining them together and starting a very strong management team. And that's exactly what I did. I put everyone together, and we started a strong management team. And I had a vision for the park. And that's the most important thing for a CEO, for a chairman, for a dean, for a chancellor, president of a university. The China dream: have a dream, have a vision. Every business wants to know what's coming tomorrow. Staff wants to know where they're going to be. In my world, I always say there's no bad staff, there's bad bosses. Staff comes to work every day wanting to do their job. It's up to the CEO or the chairman to really paint the picture for the staff of where this company is going, where's this university going, what's the future for the university, what's the future for this company. And so I've always thought to myself how important that is. And I saw the vision, again, looking at things for what they are, not for what they could be. And I thought to myself, the park is beautiful. It's on a hillside. It overlooks Deepwater Bay. It's got a cable car that's been there for many years. And it just has beauty. It just needs a little work. And it needs a new plan, a new vision. And that's what I did. The first thing I did was get a paintbrush, painted the park, fixed some of the pavement, and then sat down with designers, went around the world to educate myself on what a theme park is about. Went around the world and interviewed a lot of theme park designers and told them, I want the best park in the world. Forget the cost for a moment. Design something, don't design to a cost. Design the best thing that you think you can do. Then I'll worry about the cost, how to make a business out of it. And so they said, you're kidding, really? I said, yes. And I tried that approach, and they gave me some beautiful we divided the park into different lands and did the natural scenery of the park. And at that time, the biggest problem was the cable car. On weekends, Saturday and Sunday, if it was raining or the weather was cold, it was the only way to get from the lowland to the headland. And I'd see people, sometimes old people, young people, lining up for 2 hours, or if it was raining, waiting to take the cable car. I thought to myself, well, why can't we have a train, a funicular that goes through the mountain? At that time, I asked the government and said, oh, no, cannot. And so I said, well, I'm not an engineer, but we have MTR in Hong Kong. How did they get the MTR to go underground? I said, there's that machine that goes round and round and drills through the rock underground and creates an MTR. So why can't we take that machine in a very limited, naive way And I worked with consultants and said, sure, everything can be done, just costs money. I said, well, let's do it. Let's decide how much, and let's do it. And so we wound up with a funicular, with a train to connect through the mountain. We can move 10,000 people an hour, and it took a lot of pressure off the cable car. And then, rather than just to show you the creativity, rather than just do a train like an MTR, I made it into a ride. For those of you, I'm sure everybody's been on that funicular, the lights go off, we have a video in the ceiling, and you think you're underwater. You turn it into a fun ride. And that's exactly what I did, just to make it something special. I hate boring things. And then the other thing, the food in Ocean Park, when I first got there, the food was awful because it was concessioned out to a local operator. And the thought was, you know, I used to joke around, I said, you know, the food was so terrible that if you want to have a decent meal, you had to leave the park, go outside to a restaurant, and then come back again because the food was so bad. I said, why can't we upgrade the food? And they said, well, the customers are from mainland China a lot, and they don't expect more. One rule I always have, if you want to be successful, give your customer more than they expect. Then they'll come back again. If you give them, you know, something very special, they'll become a recurring visiting customer. And that's what I did. And so I got rid of that company, canceled the tender, and we took the food and beverage in-house, and we redid all the restaurants, upgraded the park. Then we had this vision from all the designers, and we put everything together on paper. And I did a video then to get the government excited because the cost of redoing the park was going to be $5.55 billion, not a small amount of money. Now I had to sell it to the government in order to get the money for it. And the worst thing is selling it to LegCo. The government would be easy. I needed LegCo to approve it. And so we had a business plan that in 12 years we could pay back the money to the park. We could borrow from the government, but then I also said, let's go out to the banks with government underwriting some of it. The banks then would loan us the money, and we would have the money to do it. So I did a really exciting video of what the park could look like. Because Disney was coming, I needed to be world class. And then for 12 days, one by one, I called, at that time, all the government officials. I didn't want them all together. I wanted one-on-one, so I can work on each one one-to-one rather than have everyone in a room. I was worried if everyone comes, you know, they must start talking. If they don't like it, it's a lot more difficult. One-on-one, I have a chance. And the video was great. And they all got excited. And so they said, okay, $5.55 billion, we got to go to LegCo. So I did the same thing, went to LegCo, showed them the video, did a whole sales talk. And at the end of the day, the LegCo members got excited too. Because then I thought to myself, one of the beauties, how can I make Ocean Park different than Disney? You know, I did a chart. On one side, I did Ocean Park. The other side, I did Disney. What's Ocean Park? Ocean Park is local. Disney is an import from America. So that's one difference. Disney is about fantasy, and what they do, they're the best in the world, mechanical. Ocean Park is about environment, education, all conservation, all the important buzzwords that young people today are so concerned with. So now I see this is mechanical, and we're alive. We have a very good message. Then the next thing I see is Disney is about a castle and a mouse. Ocean Park, we have live animals. If I go to a Disney attraction one day, it's great, I take it, it's really good. If I go the next day, it's mechanical. Same thing. Ocean Park, we have pandas, we have live animals, we have aquariums, we have fish, we have all kinds of things. One day I can go visit the pandas. One day I can go in, they're hugging. The next day I go in, they're hanging from a tree. The third day I go in, they're fighting. So I realized with live animals, expect the unexpected. Disney is mechanical, so it's different. So I have an edge already. I can get people coming back every day. Ocean Park has generational value. Parents grew up with Ocean Park, grandparents grew up with Ocean Park, children growing up with Ocean Park. It's local. Disney is an import. The food, everything we did was to fit into what Hong Kong people grew up with Ocean Park. And so that was my strength with Ocean Park. And so we started it, we redid the park. I got approval for the money. And then my claim to fame is every year for 12 years in a row, we beat Disney in attendance. Never before was that done by a local theme park anywhere in the world. And what did that do? That gave all the staff who, when I first came there, their uniforms were totally out of shape. The first thing I did was change the uniforms, make them all feel, as soon as I put them in another uniform, wow, the scowl turned to a smile. They were all smiling, so happy. And totally started to change the whole culture in the park. Became a can-do culture. People became proud, the staff became proud working at the park. Because in that business, hospitality business, the customer feels if the staff is unhappy. It's like a retail shop. If the salesperson is unhappy and gives you a difficult time, they're not selling anything. And so that was something that was very important to me, getting the staff to feel confident of themselves. And then we had a lot of mainland customers coming. That was good. I made them feel at home. I made everything, the menus, the signs, everything in Putonghua, because I thought it's really important. I want them to feel comfortable as well, not to feel foreign in a place like Hong Kong, a place like Ocean Park. It became everybody's park. And after 6 years, I won the Applause Award, which is like the Oscars in theme parks, became the #1 theme park in the world. I wanted people to really be proud. And of course, Hong Kong people really were proud of Ocean Park because it was our own park, and we showed that we can win amongst the best in the world. And that's what Hong Kong is all about, winning and being the best in the world. Your young people in this room, the future is in your hands. The future is about technology. Technology is something that is changing the world, disrupting the world. Every industry is changing. Hong Kong needs to be one of the leaders. Unfortunately, we're falling behind. China is leading the world in technology today. In the next short while, AI is here, but coming, it will change everybody's life. Artificial intelligence will change everybody's life. You'll know more, whether it's medicine, whether it's universities, everything will be taught through AI. 5G is coming next year, and 5G again will also change your life. 5G, you'll be able to download a movie in 4 seconds. Everything will be on your phone. Your whole life will be in the phone. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but it's happening. It's something that is very, very important. And from universities to businesses, everybody, the hardest thing is to accept change. The hardest thing for companies is to accept the thing that made me successful is always to be open-minded. Accept change. Don't fight change. It's natural to fight change. Human nature puts up a wall, puts up a defense. But some of us are pleased when things change. It's something new, something fresh, a new challenge. And that's something that Hong Kong people, young people especially, need to be aware of. You know, the future for Hong Kong, you've heard this 3 letters, GBA, Greater Bay Area, many times now. This is something, the Greater Bay Area is 9 plus 2 cities, Hong Kong, Macau, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Zhuhai, Foshan, Zhongmen, all these 9 cities in China in the Pearl River Delta. Hong Kong, we have 7 million people. This is a 1.5-hour radius within Hong Kong. It has 68 million people within 1.5 hours of Hong Kong. Last year, they had a GDP of 1.6 trillion US dollars. Unbelievable, it's huge. So the opportunities for young people and also the infrastructure now. I was just on the high-speed rail 3 weeks ago, the new high-speed rail between Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. I was there with the government on the inaugural trip. Hong Kong to Shenzhen took us 15 minutes. Hong Kong to Guangzhou was 42 minutes. It was a game changer. I told the press when I came off that literally you can meet a friend in Guangzhou for lunch, come right back to Hong Kong. It's no different than going to Shengshui from Central or Tuen Mun or any of the other places. It totally connected the cities. And then I've been on the bridge between Hong Kong, Macau, and Zhuhai. I went to Macau, it takes a half hour on the bridge. It's unbelievable. I had a meeting in Zhuhai 2 days ago, same thing. Half hour to Zhuhai, going through the border, and then you're in Zhuhai. And so the closeness, because of the infrastructure that's helping Hong Kong, many Hong Kong people don't realize it, but this is coming. Organically, we will be, when the Greater Bay Area comes into being, it'll make Hong Kong and China much closer. And there's nothing wrong. We're now working on a paper for Carrie Lam, a document, which will list out how Hong Kong and Macau can fit into the different systems of China. China, of course, the financial system is different than Hong Kong, the legal system is different than Hong Kong. So there are differences between the two places. But how can we make it fit together? It gives young people a chance to really advance themselves. If you look at Shenzhen today, Shenzhen is greater than Silicon Valley. It's unbelievable what's gone on in Shenzhen. You have giant companies like Huawei, Tencent. You have so many companies in Shenzhen that are amazing. Now technology, that's one of the forefronts that we're trying to push the government act quicker. Cyberport has finally come into its own. There's a lot of good young companies in there. The Science Park has also been very, very good. And now Hong Kong and Shenzhen are joining up in Lok Ma Chau, the loop as well. We'll have the Hong Kong, Shenzhen innovation and technology buildings. Research and development. Each city will be strong in their own right. Hong Kong has 8 universities that are for world class. Almost every single one that we have is great. Research, we have great young people who are working on research, and that'll help. We can be the front end, the back end. Shenzhen will have its strength. Guangzhou has its strength. There's so many places in China that are working now in technology. And so we don't want to be left behind. And it's really important. The opportunities for young people are amazing. We can't miss the chance. We won't miss the chance. And we'll find the right way. But that's the future of Hong Kong. The 68 million people, we'll go from 7 million to 68 million people. Hong Kong faces a lot of problems. The housing prices in Hong Kong have been so high, it's affected everyone. Everyone in Hong Kong, whether you're rich or poor, the prices are insane. Since I've been here, they've always been expensive, but not like today. They're out of reach for young people, and a lot of young people have no hope because it's going to take them 30 years to get enough money to put a mortgage to buy a house and 70 years to pay it. We have a shortage of land. Because of the British, in their wisdom in the old days, only 24% of Hong Kong's land is buildable because the British instituted that. And of that 24%, 7% is for residential. And that's why you have all these problems. We have a growing population, and we don't have land. And that's something that's really, really important. So I know Carrie Lam has talked about reclamation. The only way forward is reclamation. And I know there's been a lot of controversy from a lot of different sources, but I say, don't fight it. Reclamation is good. 1,700 hectares will give you a chance to house 1.1 million people in the future. It'll alleviate all the problems that we have here in Hong Kong, which we don't have land. Yes, people say there's brownfields in the areas near country parks that are around, but they're all bits and pieces. Once and for all, let's do reclamation where we can really plan a place where people can live like human beings, not in subdivided flats, not in little shoe boxes. That's a cage. That's for some animals. Some people put birds in those cages, not human beings. And that's something that's really important for a place like Hong Kong with reserves of the money we have. It is insane that people are living the way they are. And so that's something for young people to change for the future. Be positive. Don't listen to some of those people that are negative on everything. Yes, they're worried you might affect the environment to a certain extent. But I always look at what's better. Human life, both are important. But I think it's more important that human beings live like human beings in the right way. When I came from Canada, we had a lot of space. We had big houses at very cheap prices. And Hong Kong needs to do the same. And of course, the Greater Bay Area, some people eventually will move to Zhuhai and other places, some older people, so that they can also live like human beings. But this is the future of Hong Kong. And it's something that is really important. Be positive. Make sure that as you leave school and as you all enter a career, I want to see some more great people, like the Jack Ma's of this world who had an idea, who knows nothing about technology. I sat on the board of Alibaba. Jack knows very little about technology. Like Steve Jobs, has ideas. You know, Taobao, Singles Day, 11/11, $30.8 billion US dollars in 24 hours. Unheard of ever in the history of the world. The trade war between China and US will get settled. I'm not concerned. And so I think that the world is a great place, and it's what we make of it, and how we can all in this room get together, work together, be positive, and make this place a better place, because Hong Kong, to me, is one of the best places in the world. The best place to live, the safest place, looking at what's going on in the United States at the moment with shootings and killings in Europe and all the other problems. The problems we have in Hong Kong are nothing compared to what goes on in the rest of the world. So let's all be proud of Hong Kong. Let's make this place a better place, and let's continue to have great ideas and continue to make Hong Kong the great place that it always has been and it always will be. Because I myself will do everything possible to keep us at the forefront as #1 in the world. Thank you very, very much.